In 1980, Essex police officers received incoming calls directly, and that was the case during the February 14 explosion. Overwhelmed with calls from both the public and media, Chief Ed Primo, pictured here, quickly had a dispatcher take over the calls. When interviewed for the book Rising from the Rubble, Chief Primo generously passed on an audio tape from that morning. Here, and for the first time released to the public, are parts of that historical tape. Please go to the next slide to listen.
Good evening. What is the big explosion? That's okay, goodbye. Where's the fire in Essex at?
Right on the main street.
What is it?
It's large building, the whole side of the street.
Huh?
Who's this?
This is Mrs. Kohler from Essex. We're just over here on the Gessler Road, and we can see it, and I wondered what it was.
Yeah, it's just the building next to where the Aberdeen used to be.
The building next to the Aberdeen.
Yeah.
What do you mean, like the
Where
hardware?
the Aberdeen used to be.
Yeah.
The barber shop in that area.
Is that the place?
Yeah.
Was there an explosion?
Yes.
About 2 o'clock?
Yes.
That woke me up.
I gotta go, ma'am.
Okay, sorry.
All right. Essex Police.
Yes, I'd like to know if anybody's reported an explosion.
Yes, ma'am. We're here right now. The police, the fire.
Mr. Police, just record.
Essex Police calling. You get any help we can get?
I put all the guys I can down this way right now, Christmas. Unless I get some more out.
Okay, we got the main street, every window's out. This place is burning here.
Okay, that's okay. I'm trying to get as many as I can. Urson should be there shortly.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Essex Police.
Yeah, how are you this morning?
All right.
It's Kennedy. What's up, Neil?
Who is it?
Bob Kennedy.
We got a big fire on the main street, an explosion and a fire.
Yeah, it woke us up. The house shook.
We blew every window out on the main street of Essex.
It's all right.
Gotta go.
You need some help or anything?
We thought we could. We got all the windows out. We gotta keep an eye on the stores right now that they're trying to get people. There's people. There's people in the building. Okay, I'll come back.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, right.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It'll be a long time before I get home.
Why?
Now the whole town's gone.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, there's some happened down here where the Aberdeen used to be.
Yeah.
That whole block's on fire and every window on the main street is busted.
Okay, yeah, our kids aren't there, right?
Oh, Brian and David here.
David with you?
Yeah.
Oh, I see the end of
The whole town's downtown here.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Essex Police, is that almost here in Essex?
I've got 3 on the way.
We got one guy out of the fire here. Needs one right away.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell them to move it right along.
Okay.
Yeah, you keep cutting me off for a reason?
We haven't got time to talk to you, ma'am.
Okay.
We're busy.
Okay.
Yes, it's Scott White calling from the Canadian Press. I understand you have a fire going on there.
Have a bad fire.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, not too much as yet, other than there's a bad fire in the whole block of downtown and a bad explosion. And out of windows for 2 blocks. Very bad. That's all I can tell you this time.
You know, did it start in a residential area?
No, it's in the commercial area downtown.
So it started like at a
In the store, yes. That's all I can tell you right now, though, I'm sorry. Did anybody hurt? We don't know just yet. We just took some. We were just sleeping on the place. There's a big noise. There's a big fire here. It's bad. It's bad downtown.
Thursday, February 14th, 1980, started with a bang so loud those sleeping 10 miles away in Cottam heard it. In Essex, windows were blown out, ceilings came crashing down, and within hours it would seem everyone in the county knew what had happened. Reporters and photographers from the Windsor Star were on the scene of the February 14, 1980 Essex explosion. Essex Bureau reporter Lee Pulzer was one of the many who accounted some of the early details. This dramatic front page photo by Grant Black shows what was believed to be members of the Essex Fire Department battling the fire. At 1:50 a.m., Town of Essex Police Constable Roger Younger was on traffic observation on Talbot Street North, near the railway tracks, and was in his cruiser at the former Beaver Lumber, which is now where the Red Apple is located. He observed a car pull into an alley behind the stores on Main Street. Constable Younger heard a crash as the car hit the wall where the gas meter was. A 1973 Maverick, seen here on the right, ran into a gas meter that was behind Ralph Adams' barbershop and a home hardware store owned by Ib Finbo. Those who are unfamiliar with what happened on Valentine's Day, it will be somewhat shocking to know that there are rumors, accusations, and a lengthy lawsuit that pitted one brother against another. After the driver was taken into custody, Constable Chris Southward called Union Gas, who dispatched Charles Bockwell, a service technician who lived in Essex. Bockwell called LaChanze Towing, who sent out tow truck driver Bill Hesbin. This picture shows the remains of the Union Gas van. As soon as the explosion happened and fire began to leap into the sky, Essex Fire Chief Hank Scratch did not waste any time in calling in other departments from Colchester North, Gosfield North, Sandwich South, and Windsor. Chief Ron Fick ran the brigade that was stationed in Cottam and quickly got his firefighters together and headed to Essex. There were 7 buildings that were destroyed immediately or were in such disrepair that they had to come down. The one adjacent to the railway tracks, now gone, was owned by Gene Housen and housed carousel trophies that was operated by Mary Fick and Evelyn Denemy. In the back of the building was Ed's Affordable Homes. Earlier accounts thought that when the car was pulled off the gas meter, that instantly caused the explosion. This was not the case. It took about 20 minutes from the time the meter was hit to the actual explosion. Seeping into the hole in the wall of the hardware store, the gas found its way to a space heater. 6 minutes after the explosion, 18-year-old Rick Bono, an 18-year-old firefighter who lived just around the corner from the fire hall, became one of the first on the scene. There was damage to the fire hall, which literally was a few hundred feet away from the explosion happened. Turning onto Main Street, Bono will later describe what he saw was a war zone. Other firefighters at the front of the scene, besides the teenager Rick Bono, were veterans Keith Ebbinghaus, Norm Forrester, and Bill Gillespie. It is these 4 volunteer firemen, along with a local citizen, were credited with saving Bruce Butler. Butler was living above one of the stores that immediately collapsed, and he was buried beneath the rubble. David Neal, seen here in this Windsor Star photo, came over quickly from his home near the public school, and he heard Butler under the bricks and alerted the firemen. Butler survived. However, he did suffer serious injuries. There were 2 apartments above the commercial businesses. The one in front was occupied by John Andrews and Laurie LaChanze. At the time of the explosion, neither one of them suffered major injuries. Some 35 years later, LaChanze recalled that night with detail. She said that walking through the apartment, they could see the roof was partially off. John managed to push open the door to their apartment, and they escaped down a debris-filled stairway and out onto the street. Hundreds of local residents left their homes and came to assess the damage to their main street. They were kept at a safe distance as they watched the flames shoot into the night sky. Essex Police Chief Ed Primo said that the explosion happened at 2:08 a.m., and within a couple of minutes, Constables Younger and Southworth were busy making and receiving phone calls. At that time of the day, and in 1980, officers would have handled incoming calls directly. And there were lots of them. Not only were local residents calling asking what had happened, but it did not take long for the media to pick up the phone. One of the decisions that Chief Primo made was to quickly have someone assist with all the inquiries. The dispatcher should be commended for doing such a great job and staying calm during the disaster. When Carolyn and Don Costin Sr. were taking a closer look at the damage of the Grand Central Hotel next to Shinkles, the stage area Bobby J's band was set up for the Valentine's Day dance was untouched. Last call at the Grand back then was 1 a.m. Today is 2 a.m. And if that was the case on February 14, 1980, there would have been serious injuries or worse, fatalities. One account said that the blast was so strong, the glass from the front of the tavern blew into the lounge and stuck into the back of chairs. Pat McLaughlin picked up his wife who had finished her shift at the Grand, and in one media account recalled, "I turned around the corner and this explosion rocked my car. It exploded into a ball of flame and went right through the top of the building. It looked like the 4th of July." Meat Market, the white building seen here on the left in Essex, is well known, and during the night of the explosion, it was on the opposite side of the street when it happened. When he arrived on the scene, Gerald Shingle thought that the damage was not that extensive and it could be repaired in quick order. Like other business owners, he wanted to get a close-up look of the damage, so when he went into the neighboring pool hall, crawled underneath the tables, and was somehow able to get into his business. He did not stay long, as Police Chief Ed Primo quickly had him evacuated. This car, shown here, was owned by John Andrews. Bernstein Real Estate Office was one of the hardest hit by the explosion. Brothers Earl and Morton chose not to demolish it, but rather preserve the historical building. Their neighbors did not have such an opportunity. 40 years after the February 14, 1980 explosion, the Bernstein Real Estate Office and the deluxe restaurant, shown here, still stand side by side. Michael's department store has since been torn down. Lawyer Harvey Strasberg of Windsor represented Bruce Butler in over 100 businesses in a lengthy court case which took him 2.5 years to gather evidence. The case was heard before Judge R. E. Rutherford in June 1983, and on October 28, he had a verdict. Judge Rutherford deemed that both Ronald Butler, the driver of the car that struck the gas meter, as well as Charles Brockwell and his employer Union Gas, were equally to blame for the explosion and damage caused. Damage was assessed at $5 million. Some of the damage from downtown businesses, including Ted Richardson Shoe Store, which had all its front glass broken, as well as several ceiling tiles, and the walls were cracked. The Pennywise at 58 Talbot Street North had no windows left and the ceiling had collapsed. The explosion literally lifted the Grand Central Hotel off its foundation. It had to be demolished. Beaver Lumber estimated its damage at $50,000.